Okay, I can confirm we are now live streaming on YouTube, and it is 6 o'clock.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. Well, good evening. Welcome to another remote planning meeting. First of all, as I usually do, a little bit of general housekeeping. I'm Councillor Margaret Glancy, Chair of Planning, and prior to this evening's meeting, we have been testing the technology and can confirm that the speakers are in attendance, apart from two who we couldn't manage to get hold of, but no doubt they will come forward later on, and they can be heard. I also confirm that I can see and hear my fellow participating members here this evening, and those members are Councillor Bindloss, Councillor Brown, Councillor Chandler, Councillor Faulkner, myself, Councillor Glancy, Councillor Hewson, trying to spot Councillor Hewson. Can't see Councillor Hewson. Is he actually here this evening?
He hasn't joined the meeting yet.
Okay, right. Do we want to send him a quick email, please, Sarah, if you're monitoring this? Councillor Higgins, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Posnett, Councillor Steadman, and Councillor Wood. I can spot Councillor Wood. So I think it's just Councillor Hewson that hasn't turned up this evening so far. But we'll continue.
Madam Chairman, he will be here. He said he would.
Yeah,
earlier in the
I'm
week.
just having a glitch trying to sign in because
Yeah. It is a difficult one.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We also have a team of officers present this evening. We have the Assistant Director for Planning and Delivery, which is Jim Worley. We have the Planning Development Manager. Well, we did have. No, she's not here either. Louise Parker. She's not here this evening. Is that correct, Jim?
No, Louise is here doing it.
Right, okay. Louise Parker's here. We've got the Solicitor of the Council, which is Tom Pickwell. If Tom could raise his hand somewhere. There we go. I can spot him, okay. Democratic Services Manager, Natasha Taylor. And our Democratic Services Officer, Sarah Evans. Have I missed anybody?
You have, I'm afraid, Model. We've also got Sarah Legg, Local Plans Manager.
You know what? There's an extra face there. I'm just thinking it's Sarah Legg.
For the same item, Sarah.
That's okay. That's brilliant. Members speaking this evening, I'd be grateful if you could please raise your hand and use that facility on your screen. And a member of the Democratic Services team, namely Natasha, will make a note and inform me accordingly should I not spot it on the screen. Members voting. Please note a remote member participating in a vote will cast his or her vote as if participating in a recorded vote. I will ask members alphabetically for their vote, for, against, or abstain. All microphones will be unmuted whilst the vote is being recorded. And following the vote, all microphones will be returned to mute. Disruption to remote conferencing. I refer you to the remote meeting procedure rules. That is, in the event of a link failure for all members, I will call a short adjournment for up to 5 minutes. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of a link failure to individual members, the remote member will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if a link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the items, providing the meeting remains quorate. If there is disruption with a member's connectivity, our solicitor, Tom, will determine whether a member has heard enough of the debate to be able to lawfully vote, depending on the particular circumstances and how much the member has missed. Just to remind everybody, this meeting is being recorded, and remember it is being live streamed. So it'd be great if you could put your phones onto silent, which I've just done. So we're all sorted there. Thank you. Now, the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Well, I haven't received any. So I think we have to take it that we haven't got any, because even though Councillor Hewson isn't here.
We haven't had any formal notification of apologies.
Right. The next item, item 2, is to confirm the minutes of the 4th of March. Oh, Councillor Hewson has just joined us.
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you.
Right, to confirm the minutes of the 4th of March. Rather than go through my list of councillors for agreement, I will assume every member agrees the minutes unless you raise your hand to indicate otherwise. Have we got any hands raised? No. There's no points of clarification on the minutes at all. Everybody agrees with them. Thank you very much, everybody. The next item is declarations of interest. As usual, I just remind you to note the content of the advice on members' interests. And if you think you have a personal, either non-pecuniary or pecuniary interest or bias, please state that now. Councillor Posnett, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't hear you for a few minutes. You were.
Oh, sorry.
I'd lost you totally. If it's declaring interest, just as a Leicestershire County councillor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, personal and pecuniary interest in item number 5. I work for a housing association. We're currently going through a significant financial and property transaction with Platform Housing. So I will leave the meeting at that stage and not partake in the debate or the vote. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. And Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It isn't an interest, but it's just a point of clarification. The member for, it's in item 5, deed of variation Waltham 14 000777 OUT. The member for Waltham sent me a message about that. As your remit seems to build affordable housing anywhere, I thought this must be one of your efforts without a care for anyone. I'd like to just put on record at the start of the meeting, I haven't met the developer or applicant on this, and also I haven't directed officers at all part of that as part of the portfolio holder. But I just wanted to make that clear, receive that representation from the member for Waltham. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, that's item 3 taken care of. Councillor Holmes, you have your hand raised. Do you have an interest?
I don't have an interest, but just thank you for the member for stating that. That is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, item 4, which is our schedule of applications. Got that many bits of paper at my desk. Item 4.1 has been withdrawn, so we'll move straight on to item 4.2. Item 4.2 is 20/00651 full 2 Vaughan Avenue, Bottisford. Now, who's going to be taking that one? Is it Jim or is it Louise?
It's myself, Chair.
Louise. Okay, thank you. I'll
Thank
hand
you.
over to you now to deliver your report to the members.
Yeah, just waiting on the presentation and
Wait for it
Natasha.
to warm up.
Brilliant. Thank you. So before the presentation, I'd just like to confirm to members that there was a drafting error on the original report, which displayed the images which are in front of you now as back to front. So they had been labelled incorrectly as they were uploaded. The matter was resolved and an amended report was sent to members and also uploaded to the website. So the images in this presentation are the ones taken from that amended report. Turning to the application in detail, members will remember this site from the committee meeting of June last year. The proposal for a dwelling on this site was refused for 2 reasons, which are set out in full in the report. The reasons centred on design, overdevelopment and inadequate provision of car parking. This application proposes revisions to the scheme to overcome those previous reasons for refusal. Next slide, please, Natasha. The footprint of the proposed dwelling has been reduced by 10 metres squared from the previous proposal and is now single storey, whereas the original proposal was for a 1.5 storey dwelling. The ridge height has also been reduced by 1.35 metres from the refusal, with the proposal having a ridge height of 4.49 metres. Full details on the impact on the character of the area can be found at section 5.3 of the report. Next slide, please. Access is provided to the front of the site with 2 off-street parking spaces provided, one of which is a garage. Dimensions for both the garage and the driveway have been assessed by Leicestershire Highway Authority, and they have confirmed that they meet with the local highway authority standing advice. And a conclusion reached that the development of one dwelling in this location is not considered to contribute to an on-street parking issue that would result in severe highway safety impacts. Section 5.5 of the report details all of the highway information in full. Next slide, please. The proposal allows for sufficient amenity space to be provided for the future occupant of the dwelling, and distances have been provided here that demonstrate that space. There's 5.7 metres from the rear of the dwelling to the boundary, 7.5 metres from the side of the dwelling to the boundary, and 6 metres to the front of the dwelling, other than where the porch area is proposed. Next slide. The internal space of the proposal is single-storey, 2-bedroom bungalow with open kitchen, lounge and dining area, along with a porch, hallway, bathroom and garage to the side of the dwelling. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, the first floor has been removed and there are no roof lights proposed. Windows have been placed on the front and rear of the dwelling with patio doors to the east opening onto the garden area. To conclude, it is considered that this proposal in its revised form overcomes the previous reasons for refusal and is recommended for approval subject to conditions in the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, do we have any quick questions for the planning for development manager, Louise, before we start? Councillor Chandler, see you hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm concerned about the distance between the garage and the proposed garage and the number 2 Vaughan Avenue. What is the width? Because all the properties on Vaughan Avenue and Fleming Avenue were predominantly built for the over 55s. There are some younger people, but they're in the main over 55s. And a lot of them use disabled facilities, such as pushers, wheels. They all have different names for these things, but they are quite wide. And I have reservations as to whether you would get one of these down the side of the property. And I wonder if you can confirm what the width is between the garage and the adjoining perimeter. Please, thank you.
I think it's 0.45. I think it's about half a metre. Just bear with me one moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's 0.45 metres.
Thank you. So in other words, you wouldn't get a wheelie bin, the regulation wheelie bin, or one of these disabled pushers.
I think that's probably a point for the debate, Councillor Chandler.
Well, I was just confirming the distance because it's not been on any of the details we've had. Thank you.
Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. It's probably not necessarily to answer straight away, but when we're debating, I remember this with the refusal, and I think it's one of those classic ones. When you read it on paper, it's pretty much. I think the original one was recommended for permit as well. When you read it on paper, you do think, well, there's not really much in it. But when you go on site and immerse yourself, I think as Councillor Chandler was trying to put there, you get to see some of the finer nuances of its relationship with the neighbouring one. So for me, and I do remember this wasn't an easy decision and an easy refusal last time either, but I think if the officers, when we're debating, I would get value of if there's how the proposed site, which was refused, and this proposal, if we can compare that, because it will help my mind's eye of where it sits. And I think other than that, the report is quite smack on, but I think that's what, well, that for me would help me when I come to a determination, if officers are able to do that.
Yeah, so officers, do we have a sort of overlay, I suppose, of one over the other? that we could compare or
We
not?
don't- No,
Yeah.
we've got the images that we presented, which showed the two layouts side by side, which we can redisplay if that would be helpful.
It would be helpful for me at least, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Right, so there's no other questions. If you could pop your hand down, please, Councillor Higgins. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the speakers this evening. And we have 3 for this application. The first one is Councillor Bob Bayman, the Parish Council. Did Councillor Bayman manage to get through to our waiting room?
Yes,
Natasha?
he did, Councillor Glancy. I'm bringing him through now.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Committee. Thank you for
Good evening. Welcome. We can't see you, Councillor Bayman, but we can hear you.
Okay.
I don't know whether you... Oh, here
Was that-
here we go. Right.
Very good.
Welcome,
and
Councillor
thank-
Bayman.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm speaking here on behalf of the Parish Council in Bottisford, of which I am a councillor. We object to this planning application and have done so on 3 separate occasions. And tonight I wanted to specifically focus on 3 concerns that the Parish Council have. The first is we still remain very concerned that the entrance to the property is too close to the junction of Vaughan Avenue and that part of Grantham Road that it links to. In addition, the property only appears to have a driveway parking for 1 vehicle, which means that it's likely that additional vehicles are likely to be parked on the road or maybe even with 2 wheels up on the path, but certainly too close to the junction, within the 10 metres of the junction, which is, obviously contrary to highway code and could cause visibility problems for people on that road or on either road. We also think that the small dimensions of the garage, in contrary to what we've heard already this evening, we feel they're too small. And that's what Highways again thought when they first looked at it, which again renders it unlikely to be used for a motor vehicle, and therefore any vehicles again are likely to end up being on the road. So that's a significant concern to us. The second is that we think that the number and density of the buildings are not appropriate to the plot. We know that there's been some confusion about how many properties on the plot over time and the way they've been named and so on, but the property footprint is too big for the plot itself, resulting on the close proximity to those buildings and green space around it. And it's noted that on previous drawings and plans that we've seen that the extra house that was previously built on the plot was not included in the drawings, which has made it always very difficult, which I think might in part be why councillors need to see the overlays that have been talked about again this evening. But it is not an appropriate amount of housing to put on that small plot. And then the third thing is the loss of the greenery, the trees, which you're probably aware we're doing a lot to try and preserve and enhance our tree population within the parish of Bottisford with our tree charter and so on. We don't think the loss of the trees is worth the loss of the trees to allow for this sort of development and the proportion of this sort of gain. So these comments are not new. They're all consistent with our comments of July 2020 and September 2020. So once again, we at Bottisford Parish Council would like to ask you to reject this planning application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well within your 3 minutes. Thank you. Do we have any questions of Councillor Bayman, members? Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, it was just some practical ones, Councillor Bayman. So thanks for the representation there. I thought you spoke really well. I'm not going to go on about the density because that's obviously a planning judgment for whoever. And one person can argue either side of that. But parts you were saying about parking in the garage being too small leads me. Have you spoken to the applicant as they've developed this at all? And because I think you are putting a good point about the parking and the garage size of how practical people use them. My car is bigger than probably cars that were built in the 80s. And if you watch Top Gear, they're talking about your dad's car kind of thing. And they weren't as big as they are now. And most garages, old garages, don't fit modern day cars. But have you have you spoken to the applicant to try and tease some of these?
No, we haven't
things
spoken
out?
directly to the applicant because what we've been trying to think about is that the current applicant might sell the house and the future users will. We have to think that current buildings are designed for current vehicles and future vehicles. And vehicles aren't likely to get smaller. They're likely to stay the current size or get bigger. And it's highly likely that proper buildings will not be, that vehicles will not be housed in a building that's made as small as that. And we think it's more of a workshop than a garage, more of a storage unit than a garage. And that's entirely fine, but we can't pretend then that it's a garage for a motor vehicle if it's not likely to be used as a garage for a motor vehicle. And I appreciate, garages were built smaller once upon a time. We have to live with that, but we shouldn't still be building garages that are too small for vehicles as we go forward.
So to sum up, from the parking side, you think if it could accommodate 2 vehicles clearly, that would have been an improvement?
That would be a significant improvement on the issue and it would prevent people having to park within the 10 metres.
That's been really helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Holmes next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bainman. I actually went, I've been really concerned. I've been up 10 times to this site and I went again this afternoon. You're quite right. I don't know whether you've measured to the end of the road because I went down there and tried to sort of imagine that I was putting a car at the side and it's like it goes around a corner, doesn't it? And I just wondered if you'd done any measurements to the end or not. Maybe not, I don't know. But and there's a funny thing about Bottisford. I also went to the co-op.
Is there a question here?
Yeah, the parking places are very narrow. And I don't know why, but that is a very narrow. And I'm just asking the question whether the councillor had actually measured to the end, because it just seems as though there's just not enough room, a parking room. That if you didn't go in the garage,
yes, exactly. Our concern is
that's all I was asking.
Okay,
yes, absolutely. We've been to check it out, and our concern is that the cars will be parked too close to the junction, making it difficult to join.
Yeah, that's what
go
I was
out
thinking.
of Vaughan Avenue and also to come into Vaughan Avenue.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
welcome.
thank you. Right, no more questions. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bainman. Thank you. Thank you. The second speaker this evening is Richard Colchester, who's an objector. If we could bring Mr. Colchester through. You're on mute, Mr. Colchester.
How's that?
Yep, you're fine now, you're live.
We're good to go.
Okay. You have 3 minutes from when you start, Mr. Colchester.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Chair and Councillors. I speak on behalf of the objectors to this planning application. The Parish Council voted unanimously against the application. The 2 Vaughan Avenue site by this proposal is to be divided into 3 plots. The approved application for a bungalow and garage to the north of 2 Vaughan Avenue was going to be with landscaping. Instead, a new bungalow and a ground extension to the original 2 Vaughan Avenue was built with no landscaping. Why is the new application being brought forward in isolation when a retrospective application linked to these changes is scheduled for a later meeting? How can the dominant and oppressive aspects to this site be assessed by the committee when the retrospective application is not considered at the same time? Our objections to this application are as follows. The application further undermines the green character of the area and represents extreme garden grabbing. The proposed building is on a half-decked plot compared to adjacent properties to the north of 2 Vaughan Avenue, and as such would mean 3 properties and 2 garages squeezed onto a plot originally having 1 property and 1 full-size garage, and this is out of character with the area and counter to planning policy D1. This plot represents denser development than surrounding plots which are deeper. The proposal is also counter to the neighbourhood plan policy 1. The design in terms of windows, patio doors, etc., is orientated to the east, which maximises the loss of privacy for number 71 Grantham Road. No windows, etc., look south to minimise this effect. Have privacy aspects been assessed by any planning visits directly to 71 Grantham Road? The practice of fully parking on Vaughan Avenue pavement continues, with other vehicles mounting the pavement. This development, with a garage noted by highways of a size insufficient for most vehicles, will make a dangerous street parking situation near a corner even worse for pedestrians, wheelchair users and emergency vehicles. It is occurring before properties are occupied on Vaughan Avenue. Pedestrians are obliged to walk on the single-track slip road, a rat run, often used by cars and vans. We therefore ask the committee to reject this application. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I see Councillor Higgins has got his hand raised.
Sorry, Chair. I'm asking lots of questions today.
Oh, no, all right, go ahead.
I think because it's a Zoom, this is a Zoom meeting, and this is it's entirely up to you, Chair. Mr. Colchester did say, why are we determining this without determining another retrospective application? And I'm not aware of that. But I do know the reason for it. Now, if I'm sure the officers would do that when we come to debate, Mr. Colchester will be out of the room by then, where if we were meeting in person, he would be in the room at the same time in a physical room. So that's why I'm just making that point, because maybe officers and yourself might want to explain that point to Mr. Colchester, and if you had a question on it.
Would you like to respond, Louise, at all on that, as to why it's here, or even Jim?
I'm happy to respond on that. So the application site is, as per applications, they're deemed on their own merit, and this application has come forward sooner than another application. We can't hold applications back and join them together, although I do understand the thought process behind that. But it is an application in its own right and needs to be determined on its own merits.
A lot of it's just down to timing, isn't it? Thank you. Right. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Steadman.
Sorry, yeah, I would just like some clarification on that. Mr. Colchester has just referred to, and I think it's in his speech, application 18010-884, that's been passed the other side of the application site. Now, that's quite startling for me, because when I looked at this application site, I was looking at the amenity space that would be left for 2 Vaughan Avenue, only to find out late this afternoon that that garden has that application actually been passed, 18010-88, because that wouldn't leave a great deal of amenity space for the donor property if this one's permitted.
Is
so
that
has the 18010
yeah,
being permitted?
Sorry, Councillor Steadman, that isn't a question for Mr. Colchester, is it? That's a question.
No, it's a question for the officers.
Yeah, okay, well, we'd do well. So if we can move on, and then the officers can have the answer ready for you for when we do the questions of officers for clarification. Okay. Thank you. Right, thank you very much, Mr. Colchester. I think that's you sort of moving back to the waiting area now. Thank you very much for attending. The third speaker is Malcolm Bunn, who's the agent or the applicant. Ah, you seem to be a bit skewy. There we go. Right. Hello. You're also on mute. Right.
Okay.
Ready to go. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Bunn, from where you start, when you start.
Thank you very much. Madam Chairman and committee, my name's Malcolm Bunn. I'm the architect for Haar & Co. It was articled in 1966, a Derby-based practice. Our practice is based in Bottisford, We've been here for a number of years, although the majority of our work is inside the M25. I myself am a Bottisford resident. The proposal for approval is a 2-bedroom bungalow with an attached garage within the curtilage and to the south of an existing bungalow, 2 Vaughan Avenue, which is the home and residence of my client. The site is residential, yes. The proposal has been achieved with the local knowledge and requirements of the local planning officer and highways, and it complies in all respects to the national and local planning requirements. The proposal is in keeping with both in size and appearance with the surrounding dwellings. A full-size plan, site plan has been included in the application, detailing the planting and that is to be retained, the boundary and landscaping treatments and off-road parking spaces with level access to the bungalow for the residents. The proposed garden and amenity space currently exceeds the minimum required by 180 square meters. My client, to my knowledge, is the only local builder who is providing or using the resources of Bottisford to provide housing that Bottisford really needs, as in people downsizing, and as opposed to the national and local government requirements for expansion. The access to the parking spaces has been approved by highways, and the parking and access to number 1, which is the other side of the road, is closer to the junction because they have 2. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of Mr. Bunn at all, members? No, I think, oh no, we've got one. Councillor Bindloss, I can see your physical hand raising.
I couldn't find the raise hand function.
I know, it's difficult, isn't it?
Good evening, Mr. Bunn. Yeah, just quickly, you got, I noticed where the cars are parking that you have what I assume to be trees or shrubs, 4 or 5 down one side and a couple on the other.
Yeah, low.
Can you tell me, please, how high you would think they would be?
Sorry again.
Could you tell me how high or how tall they're going to grow to? I'm concerned here about a reduced vision for people pulling out of that drive.
They could be no higher than the sill of your car window by legislation. They have to be planted with that in mind.
And they wouldn't grow any higher than that then, so they'll be dwarf, basically.
Plants, in inverted commas, so that we don't have the problem of lack of visibility. It's the same with the Leylandii down the bottom. Although we have a tree policy within Bottisford, the Leylandii are a weed, in inverted commas. Nobody looks after them, and nobody trims them to where they should be. Hence, we have a plethora of Leylandii throughout the village that have gone berserk.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Bindloss?
Yes, thank you.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bunn, for joining us this evening, and we'll move you back into the waiting area.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to respond to any of things that you've heard this evening, either Louise or Jim?
Yes, I would, please, Chair. Just a couple of points of clarification, really. It was mentioned that there was parking for 1 car space. I just want to point out that the garage is, it has been amended in terms of size, so it has got the internal dimensions that are equivalent to those acceptable by the county council, so it does register as a parking space. There's also the driveway as well. So the requirement for a 2-bedroom bungalow is to have 2 off-road parking spaces, and the proposal does now have that. The other thing was, we've touched upon it already, the loss of the trees. Part of it is for visibility, but I also like to take members to condition 4, I think it is, of the report, which asks for further details of landscaping to be submitted to the authority. So obviously there is that discussion point further down to have with regards to any further planting. And there was the point, obviously, with regards to the additional plot and the additional planning application. And I think it's paragraph 1.8, perhaps, within the report. It's near the recommendation. It does detail that planning application, where it is and what's happening with it. But I'd just like to remind members again that we're considering this application this evening. Thank you very much.
Quite. Thank you. Mr. Worley, you have your hand raised as well.
Thank you, Chair. Same topic, really. Louise, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the garage dimensions are 6 metres by 3 metres.
Correct, yes.
Oh, I'm remembering something for once. And just nothing new, just to remind members that the road safety requirements of the MPPF are whether things would result in a severe hazard to road safety. Not an inconvenience, a severe hazard. They're the words used in the MPPF. Yeah. That is the bar.
Thank you for that. Right, we now move on to questions for clarification only. Members' questions.
Councillor Glancy, we've got Councillor Paul. That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I can see him physically waving and his little yellow hands up.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted we've had the dimension of the garage in metres, so that's approximately 20 feet by 10 feet. Is that correct? Thank you.
For those of us of a certain age.
9 foot 9.
That's just most people measure their car in feet rather than meters. You know, the length of the car is so many feet rather than meters. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Higgins, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just for Mr. Worley, just because before we go to debate, and I do agree with, I don't think you could refuse this on highways grounds for the reasons Mr. Worley's put. But if one thought about the design was poor, because it may result in undesired parking, so to speak, and other factors, does that come in the realms of D1?
Yes, I do. If we're talking about scenarios where the street's going to be cluttered with cars and it's unattractive, that's the design and amenity consideration rather than the road safety consideration.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was all for the debate.
Right. Thank you very much. No more questions of officers before we start the debate? Nope.
I think Councillor Steadman. Yes, Councillor Steadman's just raised her hand.
Yes. Is it your question again, the same one relating to the other application?
No, but I think the amenity space that could be left for the donor property is a consideration. No, it's page 21 actually. So I'd like clarification on this, and it's back to the parking, I'm afraid. So it says parking dimensions of 3 by 6 metres. The LHDG requires spaces to be 2.4 by 5.5. Therefore, the proposed space as shown fronting the garage is acceptable. However, as advised previously, if boundary treatments were to be proposed on the space bounded by a wall, for example, of a garage, fence, hedge, or similar, an additional ½ metre is required, or 1 metre where it's bounded on both sides. Well, this contradicts itself. It's probably not us, it's probably Leicestershire Highways. But if a garage is actually bounding this space, then it should be 3.4 by 6.5 metres, surely.
That's how I read it.
Yeah.
Are you referring to the size requirement for the garage or the parking area?
Well, they're saying any parking space. If we're counting the garage as going towards the 2 parking spaces, surely it should meet that criteria.
So the criteria for the garage is internal measurements of 6 by 3, which is now what the amended plans provide. The additional information is with regards to the driveway parking, which we've got and is, hang with me. Again, so it's got the 6 metre clearance between the edge of the pathway and the back of the garage. And they've also amended the garage door to a roller shutter door, so you haven't got that up and over clearance needed.
That is quite confusing, that statement, actually.
It is.
Very confusing.
It is. But it does comply, is the response. Okay, thank you. Councillor Falconer, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the same section on page 21, it does say that garage dimensions are 6 by 3. It should be noted that these should be internal dimensions. If it is considered towards the parking provision in accordance with the council things, the internal dimensions are shown are 5.6 by 2.9. In addition, the garage door width is 2.16 rather than the required width of 2.3. Therefore, the garage as shown is below the standard set out in the LHDG and therefore cannot be considered towards the required parking provision of 2 spaces for this application. Is that statement correct or incorrect?
So that was when the original plans were submitted, and then amended plans were provided following that information received from Highways to then change it to 6.3, 6 by 3, at which point we had Highways response to saying that all the parking met with their standards required.
Okay. So it does comply with 6 metres by 3 metres internal measurement.
And the door width.
Okay.
Does the door width comply as well?
The garage complies as a whole and as the driveway.
Okay. Are you happy with that, Councillor Falconer? Okay, thank you. Right, I think we've had our questions and now it's over to you, councillors, to start the debate. Who would like to be first? Councillor Bindloss.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I have to come back to this parking thing. And as I alluded to earlier, I have concerns about vision. Looking at this, you know, you'd have to say that if you were driving into that driveway, you would drive into it. You wouldn't reverse into it, and you certainly wouldn't reverse into the garage. There's not many people that would do that. Therefore, you'll be reversing out of there onto a road. You're very, very close to a junction. And I have to say that I have great concerns about the safety with just doing that. I think if there was a larger turning point, that's fine. If all the cars maybe were coming out of there and being driven out as opposed to reversed out, then that would be okay. But I would imagine that the vast majority of people would actually just drive into that, and they certainly would into a garage, which means by default that they are reversing out then onto the road, which I just think is not safe. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Councillor Bindloss says, but in addition to this, and I made the same comments when the original application came, was it's just basically, to me, overbuild. It's, you know, you've got a very densely populated area within housing, and we're squeezing something else in, and I still feel it's what stands is on grounds of D1, this could be refused. So basically, on the basis of that, I'm going to recommend that we refuse this application based on D1, on the fact that it's overbuild and the parking issues still continue.
So that's proposal to refuse based on local plan policy D1.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steadman, I saw your hand raised next.
Sorry, yes, I was actually going to make the point that that Councillor Chandler made earlier. I have been the carer for someone in a wheelchair, and I can tell you now, at 450 mil, you will not get a wheelchair down the side of that house, nor will you get a wheelie bin. I have been and measured mine, sad, I know, but it is 480 mil. So you've then got to go right the way around the house, and I think that is bad design. I don't think that it's necessary to build that property right up against that boundary. So I will second Councillor Brown's proposal to refuse.
Thank you. Please bear with me when I make my notes. Councillor Chandler, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am very unhappy with this. It's garden grabbing, overdevelopment, and the highways issue is a very big one. As a local person, I know that that is a rat run. I did a recce last Friday morning. I think I related this to the briefing committee on Monday. I virtually had the front of my car taken off by a van that was coming along the slip road, turned straight into Vaughan Avenue, didn't see me there, and how he missed me, I don't know. He got out with a sweat and said it was a driving error. And I asked him why he went up Vaughan Avenue, because he said he was going to the industrial estate. And he said, because you can't get into Station Road. And that is what all locals will tell you. The cottages on Bunkers Hill have to park at the junction of Station Road because the police have asked them not to park on Grantham Road. And this isn't just something you can do at County Hall looking at a Google map or whatever they look at. I've made this point before about highways. I have grave concerns the way they do some of these highway appraisals. And I can't go with this application at all. I think there's a lot more to it than people realise. And I'm not necessarily talking about, as Councillor Steadman suggested, wheelchairs. I'm talking about what they call pushers and wheels that elderly people use. I was at a friend's yesterday who's sadly, her husband's losing his mobility. And I checked his wheels because my mother had them, and they're invaluable to elderly people. And they are wider than you think. And you would never get one down that side between the garage and the thing. And surely, if you go out your front door, you're entitled to go round to the back. They need a bit of exercise. In lockdown, it would have been, Tom would have been doing his wheels. He was using wheels all the time. And how many laps did he do? And that's what they would be doing around there. No, I would support the refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. I sort of do get the bin argument. The only thing is you know, how when people start using the houses, if so necessary, they'd have to put the bin at the front. But I think when you get properties that are built in pre the war, you see these small little driveways, and now we've got bigger cars. And when it's parked, you can't get the wheelie bin by the car and on the gate. And I do know this from some properties that I own elsewhere. And the tenant says to me, I have to take the car off the drive, put the bin out, and drive it back on. And that's a faff. And we don't need that when we're building new houses. Just to comment, just for the architect who probably is watching it, I think in terms of the reasons for the previous refusal and the design of this one, by looking at it regarding the plot it sits in, I think it is very much better in terms of a proper bungalow for what they're trying to aim for. But I do have to agree, I think the design and just where it's sited, just for me, still hasn't ticked it over. And so if we do refuse it, and the applicant is so intent in still wanting to build, which they're entitled to do, as we know, and they're entitled to put another application in, you know, probably that dialogue with the parish council, and, you know, some bits you won't always accommodate with either parish councils or objectors, and that's called life. But there might be parts where, as Councillor Bayman said, about parking, the garage being too small, and there are some simple ones which you can just get out of the way. But regarding density and all the other stuff, I think Councillor Chandler put it very well. That's a matter of judgment, and some people won't agree and some people will. So, but that's up to the applicant and all that. But just dialogue. I'd have probably gone for, if someone was going to go for a deferment and for them to keep going at it. But I think I'm leaning more to refuse than a permit, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No. Okay. Well, I can actually see the drawbacks with this particular application. So, yeah, it's not the best, to be honest, that we've had before us. Certainly isn't the best. Right, if we go to the vote now, we've had a proposal to refuse. And the reason being it's contrary to our policy D1 within the local plan on design. And Councillor Higgins has sort of made some very, very valid points going forward. So are we all ready to vote on this one?
Councillor Glancy, we just have Jim Worley.
Ah, Mr. Worley, sorry, I didn't spot that.
Not to worry. Just as you were trying to capture the reasons for refusal. So I think the easiest way of doing this is working off the last ones, which are rehearsed on page 14. And I think we've got, having listened to the debate, I think we've got all of that except for those bits about design and building materials being out of keeping. So the actual elevation of the building people seem happy with. It's the overdevelopment and the parking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's correct. We've got a nod.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a nod from the proposer. Brilliant. Okay, so, Councillor Steadman, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, could we also put in there its proximity to the donor property? Because I think that access being so narrow is quite is quite important, particularly when you're building a house for the more elderly of our population.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Brown?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so if we can include that as well, Mr. Worley. Okay, yeah. Brilliant.
Part of overdevelopment, isn't it?
Yes, it is overdevelopment. Councillor Higgins, you have your hand raised. You froze. No, you haven't frozen. You're moving.
Oh, I did freeze, and then could have had 5 extra minutes there.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Refill the glasses and all that. Okay, yeah. Just on that, I hear what Councillor Steadman says, and I will just go along with that. The only reason saying is when you look, I think I know what the architect's trying to do is trying in where the garden space is near the roadside, it's to capture that vista for the rest of the public. And if the house went too far away from the neighbouring property, the rest of the community would lose more of that vista of the green space. So I see what the architect has done that. So not to move it too far south, but as Mel said, probably just a few centimetres, and I would be okay with that. But just be a bit careful on what you wish for. Sometimes is what I would say to neighbours as well. Thank you.
Yes, it is. I think it's just 0.45 metres away, wasn't it? And I think, yeah. Right, so if we move on to the vote, okay, I'll get my list of members. Thank you. Right, we have a motion to refuse. And the first one is Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Glancy. For. Councillor Hewson.
For.
Councillor Higgins.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Posnett.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Steadman.
For.
And Councillor Wood.
For.
That is unanimous. So thank you very much, everybody. And we move on to the next item, item 4.3, which is 19/01099/REM, which is Reserve Matters. Kirby Lane, Melton Mowbray. Officers to address the committee. This is Sarah Legg, who I forgot about earlier, but I'm glad I remembered.
Thank you.
If you'd like to address the committee, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Just wait for the presentation to come up.
You're laughing at.
Thanks, Natasha.
Oh, sorry, that was me.
Okay. Okay, so members will recall that this previous scheme on this site, which was reference 19/00245/REM, was refused by the committee back in October of last year. The applicant Barratt Homes has taken members' comments into consideration and has redesigned the scheme, and as such this revised proposal under reference 19/01099/REM is now presented to you and recommended for approval, subject to the conditions for the reasons as set out in the report. This first slide demonstrates how the proposal will fit in with the already approved Bellway scheme to the north, which is now under construction. The image to the left of the slide shows the site in the context. So you've got the Leicester Road Industrial Estate immediately to the west, the Leicester Road to the north, Kirby Lane to the south, and the Kirby Fields Play Park immediately to the east. The site's outlined in red, and as you can see, I've zoomed in on that image on the right-hand side of the slide, and this is also replicated, albeit the other way around, in the report at paragraphs 1.1 and 1.2. Can I have the next slide, please, Natasha? Thank you. So on this slide, members will see that the image on the left is the proposal that was before you back in October of 2020, which proposed 233 dwellings on the site. That application was refused as it was considered that the application had not sufficiently demonstrated that it would deliver good quality design and be sympathetic to the character of the locality by virtue of its appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. And it was considered to conflict with policy D1 of the local plan, design matters set out in the NPPF and the National Design Code. That is now subject of an appeal. The proposal now before you, which is that on the right-hand side of the screen, has reduced the amount of dwellings down from 233, which was the layout on the left, to 199, and that's a reduction of around 15%. On the right-hand side of the screen, I've attempted to demonstrate the main changes that the reduction in the number of dwellings has achieved, namely the inclusion of relatively significant amounts of green space, which members specifically stated that the previous application was lacking, including better connectivity to the Kirby Fields Park to the east. So this has resulted in 3 key green spaces, which I've attempted to circle there in the red, as you can see on that slide. I've referred to those plans as the Western Green, the Eastern Green and the Southern Green, and they're shown in plan form there on that screen. The resulting amount of open space across the whole development is now 1 hectare or approximately 2.47 acres. That excludes the attenuation pond, which is to the north, which is that sort of semicircle sticking out of the top of the plan. So it's in addition to that attenuation pond. So in addition, as set out in the report at paragraph 1.11, there are a number of other changes. So there's two parking courtyards which have been removed to provide more favourable parking solutions, which were also highlighted by members. The Northern Green Link, which you can't actually see circled on there, but that where it actually meets the Bellway site to the north, there's a little orange arrow. So that's been widened to help integrate and link the scheme into that development to the north to link better with the Bellway development. And that eastern edge of the development has also been pared back to soften the visual impact on the Kirby Fields Play Park. And there's significantly enhanced connectivity, as you can see, on the east-west axis, which will encourage people to move between the development and the Kirby Fields Play Park. Helpfully, Barratt Homes have been able to provide us with some images to enable members to visualise these changes and the key aspects of the development and how it will look and feel on the ground. If I can have the next slide, please, Natasha. Thank you. So as you can see from this image, the Western Green in particular, so that was the one that was pretty much central to the site, square in shape. That provides a central focus to the development layout. The landscaping is proposed to include trees, paths, benches where residents can hopefully take some time to relax, meet neighbours, allow children to play informally, and all whilst experiencing some really good levels of natural surveillance as the site's overlooked, so we don't hopefully need to worry about antisocial behaviour. If I can have the next slide, please, Natasha. So this slide is the Eastern Green, so the one that was towards the right-hand side of the screen, right-hand side of the layout, apologies. So it's looking back towards that Western Green into the centre of the site. So that's the square that you can see there further into the distance. So behind you would be the Kirby Fields play area. So the landscaping in this area is similar to that within the Western Green. So it's got trees, benches, turf, again, additional space for people to sit. enjoy some space and some time out, and actually hopefully encourage people in and out of that Kirby Fields play area. And again, the space is overlooked, offering some natural surveillance, so people should feel safe there. If I can have the next slide, please, Natasha. Thank you. So this is the smaller, but albeit very welcome green space, which is to the south of the site. So as you'd come into the site from Kirby Lane, turn right, and then this green area would be in front of you, again linking into that Kirby Fields Park to the right hand side further down, so creating that additional linkage. And again, as you can see, some trees planted and benches there, and encouraging that east-west connection across the site and residents into and out of the Kirby Fields Park. If I can have the next slide, please, Natasha. So this is the final image, which is quite similar to what members have seen before. So this shows you how the site will look as you enter it from Kirby Lane to the south. So you can see that there's been some attention to detail with the different colours of the front doors, the use of estate railing as boundary treatments, differing roof heights, chimneys, tree planting and feature buildings which present a pretty well designed frontage. Members will recall that the outline permission did not include a condition relating to the housing mix, and as such the housing mix can't be considered in the determination of this application. It does consist, as discussed at paragraph 4.7 of the report, a range of dwellings from 1 to 5 bedrooms in size. Most of those are 3 and 4 bedroom homes. You will also note that the affordable housing was a condition of the outline permission, which is to be discharged at a later date. The tenures types of the dwellings are included in that condition. So it's considered that the development that is now before you represents a scheme that functions well, adds to the overall quality of the area and complies with policy D1 of the Melton Local Plan and the guidance relating to the design, both within the NPPF and the National Design Guidance. Officers consider that it's a significant improvement on that which was presented to members in October of last year, and therefore, for the reasons as set out in the report, the application is recommended for approvals, and those conditions you can see at Appendix C. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think it's good to see the illustrations, to be honest. It's very helpful. Do we have any questions of Sarah before we hear any speakers? Councillor Steadman, is this a question?
It is actually. It was just, yes, the mock-ups do really help. Mrs. Legg showed us a picture of the Western Green, and I noted from it, it looks very good, that the road around there is paved, not tarmacked. Is that correct? Because that almost gives it a pedestrianised feel to the area. So is it paved or tarmacked?
I just need to go back into the full plan to have a look at that for you.
Yeah.
Just bear with me. Apologies, it's being a little slow.
It's okay.
Yes, that's blocked paving on the adopted part of the street. And then there's some private drives which lead off there. And I think they would be, sorry, just need to keep scrolling up and down on it. I think they are tarmac, so blacktop.
Yeah.
But the adopted area is the block paved.
So it's making it feel more pedestrianised rather than
it gives it a much softer feel.
Yeah, thank you. I thought I'd just check my eyesight.
Brilliant. Okay, no other questions. Right, we'll move on to there's only one speaker on this item this evening, and it's Robert Galley, who is the applicant, well, on behalf of Barratt's. Good evening, Mr. Galley.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome again.
Thank you.
So you have 3 minutes from when you start, Mr. Galley.
Chair, members, officers and observers, good evening to you all. This is the 4th time reserved matters at this location are being formally considered by the Planning Committee, and the 3rd time your officers support the proposed before members. At the meeting of the Planning Committee on the 15th of October 2020, members expressed concerns over the design of the proposed development, and in particular, the following 4 aspects. First, lack of open space. Second, connectivity with Kirby Fields. Third, numbers and density. And fourth, parking courts. This very latest planning layout, revision AJ, as depicted in paragraph 1.1 of the report, looks and feels very different from the earlier one. The composite plan in paragraph 1.2 demonstrates the wider locational context and integration with the approved Bellway home scheme to the north under the same varied outline planning permission, along with Kirby Fields immediately to the east. The computer-generated images CGIs displayed demonstrate visually the revised approach at specific locations across the site from south to north, with a key focus on openness and greenery, i.e. A, Southern Gateway - site entrance, B, Southern Green - southeast location, C, Western Green - central location, and D, Eastern Green - central location. All of the above enhance pedestrian connectivity to and from Kirby Fields on a west to east basis and create a looser and softer form of development. At the northern end of the site, the green link with the approved Bellway scheme is widened, ensuring integration and common connectivity with the play area off-site, i.e. immediately to the north. Along the eastern side - Edward Lane, the greenery has been enhanced as well from the previous scheme. The overall number of dwellings is reduced further since last time, from 233 then to 199 now, and consequently, the density of proposed development is lowered as well. A further 2 parking courts have been removed and a suitable planning balance now struck across the whole site between design issues on the one hand and highway considerations on the other. There are no outstanding objections from statutory consultees and stakeholders, including Leicestershire County Council Highways. Proposed conditions Appendix C are agreed and meet the 6 tests. The conclusion is endorsed and the recommendation welcomed. Chair, in conclusion, the very latest planning layout incorporates a substantial number of changes made directly in response to members' concerns. I truly hope it finds sufficient favour, ensuring a positive decision and successful outcome this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of Mr. Galley? No. Oh, there is one, yes. Councillor Higgins has his hand raised.
Yeah, I did, because and thank you, Mr. Galley, in terms of what you have put forward and listened to members. Just in your 3 minutes, you were talking about some of the technicalities of it, and I think part of this is how you're looking then to sell into new residents and then become Melton residents. Hopefully, you will sell to Melton residents when it's built. Just how do you feel the interaction of that site will work in terms of living there? So we as members can get that feeling from how you're looking to sell it from what you represented there.
Yeah, through you. It is, in our view, a satisfactory, suitable, and will be a highly desirable living environment. Without being technical, design and planning orientated, I must say it is fit for purpose. It will coexist with development in the wider area, and hopefully the new sustainable urban extension envisaged directly to the south of us in due course, and the Bellway proposed development immediately to the north, which of course the latter represents the northern component of this whole holistic entire development. So we're supremely confident that it is a suitable and highly appropriate and desirable living environment in due course.
Thank you. Just one other question, Chair, probably because it's COVID related and recovery. How would you, in terms of jobs and when your build out rate, when do you think the houses will be up, ready, and this site completed, and how much employment do you think you'll be bringing to Melton with this work? Thank you.
Chair, a lot of issues there, strictly speaking, outside of reserved matters, and I can't give you any definitive answers, nor can I give you a definitive critical time path or a key date schedule. What I can tell you is that if all goes well, subject to this evening's proceedings and the any other proceedings we may enter into later in the year, our intention is to acquire the site, commence development, clearly as soon as practicably possible, clearing all relevant pre-commencement conditions and obligations. Build-out rates are very much market-driven, as indeed are sales and marketing considerations. But there are no indications at this stage that COVID would have a negative effect on either our investment plans and or the public, the general public's desire and appetite for house purchase and owner occupation on this particular site.
Okay, thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Higgins?
I think you sort of answered it wrongly, because I was sort of trying to get the positivity of with COVID of employing people, getting the site done. That is a consideration. So that's why I asked about how much employment could be created, and the build out rate, because we're all trying to build back better, including developers such as Barratt's as well. So I was trying to get a positive kind of vibe from it.
Chair,
yep.
If you allow me to come back, throughout the COVID pandemic, I should say for the record, quite rightly and properly, the company, as part of the construction sector, has continued its activities, strictly adhering to COVID guidelines and regulations, and we have continued. Things may have slowed for a little while, but we are effectively back up to full speed. And in terms of local employment, economic and multiplier effects down the line, we will seek to utilise and employ whomever we can. And if they are based locally, so be it. But I cannot here in a public forum commit the council to any local employment contract.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Galley, for coming along this evening. Thank you. Do we wish to make any comments on what you've heard this evening, officers? Or Sarah in particular? No?
No comments.
Okay. Do members have any questions of officers? Councillor Bindloss.
Yeah, we saw from the visuals, as Councillor Steadman mentioned, that we would have a much more pedestrianised feel to this estate. With that in mind, is it something that we can discuss with Highway to see if the speed limit within that estate could be reduced to, say, 20 miles an hour? Thank you.
Do you want to respond, Sarah?
I would have to go back looking through the full Highways comments. I believe it has a design speed of 20 miles an hour, although it would have a actual speed limit of 30 miles an hour. Whether the Highway Authority would want to entertain actually putting a 20 mile an hour speed limit on there, I'm not at liberty to say.
It's just that it would make it obviously a lot safer. It looks great, but it would be nice if actually that speed limit was there, because by virtue of what you now have, which is all that green, those green spaces and that open planned feel, I would imagine it would probably put people's guard down a little bit, somewhat. So I think that by actually reducing that speed, if it's possible to do that, would be really good. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes, you have your hand raised. It's a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm so pleased that we've got more green space, because that's what we asked for. So many times, if we come back, we get a lot better. But I'm just still a bit concerned. Can you just tell me again how many houses are going to be built now on that site?
It's 199, Councillor Holmes.
It's an awful lot, isn't it?
It's within the outline permission.
I know that, but it is an awful lot. And I know some of the gardens were very small. I know we can't push them anymore, but for further build, I think we really ought to push, because we've had to push for this to get better and more green space. We ought to have pushed even harder, because, you know, children have to play somewhere. Like the little green, there's quite a wide road. It looks like quite a wide road round it, you know, and people don't always go at 20 miles an hour. I don't know how we can't do anything about it, I'm sure, but for future reference, perhaps we could push people even further to have more green space. But I am pleased to see that the green space is looking at houses, not pushed behind, because that is where you get your difficulties. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Chandler, do you have a question for officer before we start the debate?
Yes, I do, Madam Chairman. Thank you. My usual one. Who's going to pay for the maintenance of the green areas and also the paved areas? Is it going to be a management company, or are the Borough Council taking on that responsibility? Thank you.
Sarah, do you want to respond?
Yeah, it's proposed to be a management company.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I also just come back on the point regarding the roads around the greens that Councillor Holmes raised? The Spine Road is only to one side of the large Western Green, which is the sort of main road running through the site. To the south of that is a much smaller residential street, and to the west and the east there are private drives. So it's not got circulating traffic going all the way around it. It's not like a roundabout or anything like that.
No.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. No more questions of Sarah before we start? Okay, members, over to you. Councillor Faulkner. I wasn't sure who was first, but I just spotted you first. Councillor Faulkner.
Yes, thank you, Chair. At a previous meeting for this one, I believe I made a comment something along the lines of whatever we build now, we've got to live with it for the next 50 years. Looking at this now, I think I'd be quite happy to live with this for 50 years. That's all I want to say at this stage. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Posniff, saw you next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to commend Mr. Galley and Barrett's team for what they've done with this development. I think it just proves what you and I have been saying for quite a time now, that if we could only talk to developers at the beginning and talk about what our vision as local councillors are about what we would like to see, then there wouldn't be too much toing and froing with applications. But they've definitely listened to us. I think the development they've done is, it looks as if it's somewhere that, you know, most of us would be happy to live. They've got the green spaces in there, which is very important. I think if COVID's taught us anything, it's that outside space has become much more important than we ever thought it was before. And I think the linkages with Kirby Fields is what we asked for, and that's brilliant. And the children's play area is good. And I think the fact that they've managed to sort out the horrendous parking that none of us liked, I must admit, they're to be, thanked for. And I would just like to say that it's something that, I would be happy to propose that accepting, but let the debate go on.
Okay. I saw Councillor Steadman next. And then it's Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, I think basically I'm going to echo what Councillor Posner has said. I'd commend Mr. Galley on the effort, and the ward councillors and of course the officers for, I remember the three previous applications, and goodness me, has it come a long way. For a developer to lose 34 houses to achieve 2.5 acres of green space for young people, I think is remarkable. And I would actually say that the mock-ups do help. It's obvious that a lot of work, time and effort and compromise all round has gone into this, and I applaud that. Well done. I would be happy to propose it as well.
So do you want to propose it or not?
I'll leave that to Councillor Posnett. She's the ward councillor, I believe.
Well,
Or-
no,
Are you not? All right. Okay.
There's no ward councillors present this evening on this one.
Oh, is
Oh,
there
yes,
not?
there is, Mr.
Oh, there is.
Councillor Wood. There we go.
Councillor Wood like to propose.
Councillor Wood.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just reiterate what's already been said. I think for me as well, there's, in addition to everything that's been said, I think there's two other elements here. First of all, it feels as if this development now actually flows into and fits with the one to the north. It actually feels like they're more of a single piece rather than two very different developments. I'll admit, remembering saying right at the start that I felt this had a really sort of quite a Soviet look to it when it first came to us. I think also important to me, having lived close by where Kirby Fields are, I like the fact that on the eastern boundary, that what was a single road that went all the way along the boundary is now being disrupted and has some green space in the middle. So there is less chance that anybody is going to drive a car at speed on that eastern edge where children might be coming and going from Kirby Fields. So I think it just feels as if there's been a lot more care taken, and the whole nature of the development seems a lot softer. So I'm more than happy to propose that we accept the application.
Okay. And I did see Councillor Higgins' hand raised.
So we have a propose and second, Claire, don't we?
No, we've only got a proposer so far.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll second it then. Happy to second. I'd just also, again, like to congratulate Barrett, and I know Mr. And I know it's been a difficult journey from time to time, but as I think councillors have said, we do have the public interest as well, and you know, and a lot of people engaged in the local plan, and I will take praise to a lot of Melton Mowbray people. They do realise that if we're getting houses, they want the road building, and they don't. It's not just about the road as well. They want other amenities, and green space is a huge premium of what they will need, especially with COVID. I got with. I did get the commentary where they didn't want to commit to employment, but to be fair, whether it's employment from Melton or surrounding or whatever, it's still employment. When people are employed, and we're going to need people in work, and we're going to need people earning, and we're going to need trades to you know, once we come out of this whole COVID situation, and we're going to need people having money in their pockets and then going to those leisure businesses and pubs, restaurants. And we're going to need people to have houses as well, and then they can come into the town and boost the town centre, which I know a lot of members care about. I just want to praise also Councillor Chandler is being on planning. I now know when I look at some fields, Councillor Chandler, when we're on the planning bus, which we can't do at the moment, she'll say, oh, that's 2 acres, that's 3 acres. And now you start getting a vision of what that actually means, because Councillor Chandler's got tons of experience on what an acreage is. And so well done to Sarah Legg, because I know it's been a journey for you, Sarah. And I think working together, this has, you know, been something we can be proud of. I think as Councillor Faulkner said, no councillor ever wants to vote for something because they feel they have to, because it ticks a box, a policy box. They want to understand how people want to live in there, how they make their lives there, where their children are going to work and where they're going to play and walk, and how they're going to get to school and in a safe environment. And that's also why feeling it is so important, especially when it's a large application like this. So yeah, happy to second, and well done to everyone working on it, rather than, and I hope, I understand an appeal is in, I hope this application is the one that's built. Thank you.
Thank you. No other speakers? No. Okay, well, I'd just like to say, wow, what a difference. This development has had a long journey, as we all know, but at last we are where I feel I can support it. Thank you to Barrett for addressing the lack of open space, the connectivity to Kirby Fields, the numbers and density, and the car parking courts. You've certainly raised the bar, and it's very, very welcome. And I just hope that this is the version that's built out in the end. In its present form, it will go some way to enhancing the surroundings, be attractive and distinctive, a great place for new residents to live. And as I think Councillor Faulkner said, you're quite happy to spend the next 50 years there. I think it's, you know, to see it wonderfully in 50 years is brilliant. So thank you very much to Barratt's for that. And as I say, it has been a long journey, and I would like to thank them for sticking with it. So thank you. So if we'd like to go to the vote now, as nobody else wishes to speak. Right, we have a motion to approve in line with recommendations in the report. The first one, Councillor, I'm going to call is Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Glancy. For. Councillor Hewson.
For.
Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
For.
Councillor Posnett.
For.
Councillor Steadman.
For.
And Councillor Wood.
For.
Thank you. That is unanimous. So I look forward to seeing them break ground on that particular application. Thank you. And that completes the applications in front of us this evening. So I'll now move on to item 5 on the agenda. And that is a request to vary section 106 agreement in relation to Planning Permission 14/00777/ at land behind 38 to 48 High Street, Waltham on the Wolds. Who's taking this one? Is it Jim? Right, okay. Jim, hello.
Before you move on, I believe that Councillor Brown declared an interest in this item.
Oh, he did, yes, actually.
So,
yeah, I'll leave. So I'll
I
see
think
you.
I have to leave.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming along this evening.
Cheers. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you. Well remembered, Natasha. I'd forgotten about that. Right, Jim.
Okay, if we could we get the slides, excuse me, slides up, or should I say slide singular, slide 14, please, Natasha, if that's not too much of a pain. And to be honest, it barely needs this, because this proposal is not about the physical layout or appearance of the site at all. So I've just put this up just for a very brief history lesson for those of us that weren't around in 2016 when this was approved. So this is the approved plan, reference at the top, and the affordable housing. If you were really to scour the detail of that plan, you would spot 6 red rings applied to houses on the right-hand boundary as we're looking at it now, and they are the affordable houses, and that's all we really need this plan for. It's the brown ones on the right and the first of the grey ones underneath them. They were the 6 approved. So if I can turn to the report, I'll not go through it in a huge amount of detail because it does get quite involved. But you'll see on page 46 a list basically of the changes that the site owners platform proposed to the 106, and I think ranked in order of importance basically. The first thing is to remove the limit of 6. This 106 had quite unusually actually a limit of 6 imposed, and they want to take that away completely and have the whole scheme, all 26 affordable housing of various types. And then so the next paragraph, at paragraph 1.4, is how they would be mixed. You'll see different tenures there, and it's only fair of me to point out that platform had offered there can be some trading off amongst these tenure types should the debate get us to that point basically. But what they can't do is introduce either sales or discount market sales options because of the grant regime that they're tied into basically. I'll not go into the details, but that's the proposition. And then into some, I suppose, more finer details of the 106, but still important. So from, I guess, strictly the Borough Council's point of view, nomination rights is something prevalent in just about every 106 on affordable housing that we have, just so that people on our housing list connect to houses provided by housing associations and have that as an alternative to wait for council housing. So Platform have asked that they are removed certainly in perpetuity, so that they're never stuck waiting for our ideas to come forward and they can progress should houses become vacant. Importantly, and again, very, very common, very prevalent, the removal of the local connection criteria. Again, it's in just about every 106 we've got on affordable housing. And this Platform are asking for in respect of the shared ownership units. And again, that's linked up with the grant regime that they're engaged in. They won't tolerate that kind of constraint. And finally, and pleased to say the easiest bit, simply to adjust the mortgagee clause to the Homes England standard wording. That's really a consequence of the passage of time. So this 106 was written a good number of years ago and didn't carry the former words that we habitually use now. So at the risk of jumping the gun, I'll strike off that number 3, that Roman 3 at the bottom, because that's just bringing it into line what we do anyway, and that's the easy bit of this application. We go to first principles. We are concerned that an application, a scheme, should turn into 100% affordable housing. You'll see I've quoted various bits of the NPPF that talk about communities being mixed, and you'll hear from the parish council in a moment. So at the risk of stealing their thunder about being tenure blind, this would be, I think I've used the word in the report, an enclave of affordables, not a mix, a rich mix on an individual sites that we normally pursue, and that you'll see elsewhere, even elsewhere in Waltham. We're also concerned about the local connection business, and this is because the experience is that in the rural area, the local connection is quite important, and because most the lion's share of the demand for affordable housing, particularly of this type, shared ownership part of it, comes from the town, and quite simply, townsfolk tend not to want to apply for this type of housing in this kind of location, because the supply and their preference is very much to stay in the town and everything that the town offers. And the third point I would make is it's really bad luck, really. It's just one of timing, because this application's come forward at the exact same moment that the two big developments in Waltham have generated best part of 40 affordable houses on their own. So they've catered for all of the demand that's local. The evidence is that they're catering for demand that's beyond local. Some of the nominations are coming from quite far afield. And in fact, it's attracting people from the town, which wouldn't be eligible for this site, even with the changes that Platform are proposing. So I don't want to make it sound glib or unimportant, but it feels like the wrong stuff, the wrong tenancy in the wrong place and at the wrong time. So we're recommending that we don't accept this variation at this stage. By all means, continue the dialogue, see if some common ground can be found. But the way this is presented to us at the moment is short of the mark, and hence the recommendation that you see at paragraph 1.1.
Thank you very much. Do you have any quick questions of Jim before we hear any speakers? Anybody? Oh, yeah. Sorry, Councillor Higgins, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just for very quick clarity. So nomination and local connection rights, Jim. So what you're saying is, if someone was in Portsmouth and they wanted an affordable house just to get a roof over their family's head, that could happen as an extreme example, but that could happen. Where if I live in Melton, I would be competing with someone from Portsmouth.
Yeah, if they were blown away completely, that wording was deleted. It becomes a free-for-all basically, and anyone could apply for one of these houses.
Okay, thank you. Right, we have three speakers on this item this evening. The first one is Jeff Holland, who's the parish council. The parish council. If we could bring Councillor Holland forward, please. Good evening, Miss Councillor Holland. You're on mute at the moment.
Just knock it off.
There we go. You're off now. Right. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, the Parish Council objects to the deed of variation for the S106 agreement in relation to the planning permission approved in 2016. The reasons for our objections: it does not comply with either the neighbourhood plan policies nor the local plan policies. Waltham NP policy H2 states that new developments should provide a mixture of housing types to meet local needs. This DOV will not provide the mix of housing types to meet these needs. Policy H3 states the provision of affordable homes for people with a local connection will be supported, whereas this DOV seeks to remove the local qualification provisions agreed, which is totally against the ethos of affordable housing in rural areas, as described in both the neighbourhood plan and the local plan. It is determined that development should be tenure blind, where affordable housing is indistinguishable from market dwellings and spread throughout any development. This variation will permit the whole development to be affordable, not being distributed and indistinguishable, and certainly not tenure blind. Through a number of approved changes in materials, the development is totally different to that which this committee approved in 2016 and would probably not be approved if submitted today. Melton Local Plan Policy C4 requires there is a minimum of 32% of affordable housing in developments of 11 or more properties. It is appreciated that the S106 has been agreed at a maximum of 23% in this case, but with the other approved developments providing above this number, Waltham already meets the criteria of this policy. In addition, policy C5 does allow the provision of 100% in rural areas if there is a demonstrable need for this provision with a local connection. This is not a rural exception site, neither is there a demonstrable need for conversion to 100% affordable. The S106 agreement was put in place by this council with specific reasons and is a legally binding agreement representing the requirements set down by the Borough Council to represent policies in neighbourhood and local plans, allowing developers to change these provisions.
Sorry, you've got 30 seconds.
Okay, allowing developers to change these provisions to suit their own requirements is a travesty of the system if allowed to prevail. The Parish Council therefore urges you to refuse this deed of variation, which should remain in its current form in perpetuity with no amendments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of Councillor Holland? Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along this evening.
Thank you.
Our second speaker this evening is Val White, who is a parishioner of Waltham on the Wells. Hello there. You're on mute at the moment.
Hi.
Hi. You have 3 minutes to address the committee once you start.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good evening. I would like to object to this deed of variation. This site has always been very contentious in the village. When the original planning was applied for, there were 90 objections and not one in support. It was passed in 2016 by one vote with 19 conditions and an S106 attached. Part of the S106 agreement stated that only a maximum of 6 affordable houses could be built on the site. This was most unusual because normally a minimum number is stipulated. This unusual stipulation is very pertinent as to how the character of the site was envisaged and agreed. It seemed inexplicable why a company like Platform, who only build affordable homes, would then purchase this site with that clause attached. As they started construction, they openly advertised the fact that they were building 24 affordable homes, when this was in complete contravention of the original planning permission. And it appears that they only applied for the deed of variation after the parish council questioned the validity of what they were intending to do. There is no discernible need for such a change in the composition of the site. We have 3 new developments in the village, 131 new homes, of which 44 will be affordable, which more than adequately meets the local demand. This request also seeks to remove the local connection criteria, meaning that local people will not be given priority for affordable housing. This is in violation of our neighbourhood plan and the local plan policies, and importantly, the wishes of our community. If this deed of variation is approved, the village would be presented with a separate standalone development. It would be distinguishable from the surrounding area and would by its very nature be in contrast to the ideal of forming an integrated and mixed community. By requesting this deed of variation, Platform hoped to benefit from substantial grants. However, the benefit of the grant and housing is not being designed to support the locality and village. Platform purchased this site in the full knowledge of the limitations on the number of affordable houses permitted in the S106. So why should the council have to amend the agreement just to suit their requirements and plans that would be to the detriment of supporting the sustainability and community of the village? I urge you to reject this request for the deed of variation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of Val White? Nope. Okay, well, thank you for coming along this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mrs. Wise, representing Platform. Judith Wise. Now I know the first name.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Right, we can't see you. I don't know if you've got your video. Mind you, here we go.
Hopefully you can now. Yes.
You can, yes. Yeah. So you've got 3 minutes from when you start.
Okay. Platform have requested removal of identifying 6 units for affordable housing in the 106 agreement, as the development is now 100% affordable of a mixed tenure. Affordable units identified in a 106 agreement are not Homes England grant fundable. Taking this requirement out of the 106 allows funding for all 24 units, which gives Platform greater financial capacity to spend on the scheme itself and provide a better quality development. The 106 in the 5th schedule part 1 under meanings has a definition of affordable housing as 6 affordable associated land subject to the provisions of this schedule. At part 2 of the 106 requirements, 2.4.1, states a maximum of 6 dwellings to be erected on the site shall compromise of affordable housing. This is an inconsistency in the 106 between definition and requirements for affordable housing. Platform investigated the affordable housing need in Waltham, and our very experienced letting team, who have relationships with Melton District Council's nominations team, supported the provision of 15 affordable rented units. Our sales team, with their extensive knowledge of the area, are happy to have 9 shared ownership houses as they see a need. Melton District Council housing strategy were consulted when we were buying the land and commented that the village being predominantly large, unaffordable properties meant villagers cannot afford to stay in the village, and therefore there is a need for 1 and 2 bed houses, which this development predominantly is. Melton did point out there are 2 large sites in the area delivering affordable housing, so I spoke to Riverside Group, who have 22 units at the Bellway site, Waltham Heights, and he confirmed that all 22 units being handed over by March 21 had reservations on the shared ownership and tenants allocated for all the rented units. He added that due to Waltham's good reputation and relative proximity to Melton, he would expect further demand and that he would be happy to consider another site of similar size in the future. I also contacted the head of new business at Longhurst Group, who have affordable units at Forest Heath, built by Brampton Valley Homes. Longhurst stated that reservations had been slow but were expected to be at 100% by handover, again in March 21. Our properties will not be ready for handover until January 2022, 10 months after the last affordable property was delivered. Shared ownership can
30 seconds, Chairman.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Shared ownership can staircase to 100%, rendering the properties in full ownership the same as any private market sale property. Should it still be felt there are too many rented, we are looking at 5, but it is negotiable, rent to buy. The tenant will then have ability to purchase their property after 5 years and have ownership. The tier system was not objected to for nominations. We just wanted a less of a time scale to the
3
point.
minutes, Chairman.
Thank you. Have you nearly finished?
Yes, it was just a few words. Less of a time scale before opening it up to the rest of the county, but predominantly the first applications would be Waltham on the Wolds.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mrs. Wise at all? Councillor Higgins, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Wise, for clarifying who you've written to and spoken to. I think just for some clarity here, because I had a representation before which wasn't based in any fact at all, that I had either met with you or your organisation. You didn't state that in your 3 minutes, and I don't believe I've ever met you before.
No, I've never met you before, and I haven't discussed this scheme with you at any time.
Thank you. And would you say that it is important that your application is heard fairly?
Yes, very important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steadman, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, yes, Mrs. Wise. I'm just intrigued. So Platform knew that there was actually a maximum, which is unusual in a section 106, of 6 affordable houses on this site before you bought it?
No. We bought the planning approval with the 106. The site was presented to us with this already in place. The planning application was not ours, nor was the section 106. We didn't pick up on the fact of the word maximum. And that is our fault. No qualms about that at all. It is very rare, to be honest. Platform Housing operate from Lincolnshire down to Cambridgeshire, and I've asked internally about this, and no one in our company has ever come across a local authority putting this word in a section 106 agreement. As you can probably understand, a lot of the developments that we deal with and purchasing land for 100% developments, we will always be looking at a 106 agreement, because any development above 10 or 13 properties will require automatically for there to be a 106. It's standard procedure and expected and accepted also.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Wise, for coming along this evening.
Thank you.
Do we want to come back on anything, Mr. Worley?
Yeah, if I may, please. Just one observation and one factual point. So the observation is responding to Mr. Hullen's comment that 106 should never be changed when they've established. Is there's a provision in the legislation, so clearly there's an expectation that on occasion, when the circumstances are right, that can be done. So there's no such thing as a moratorium. The other thing, and Natasha, sorry if I can be a pain again, is there any chance you could put up the presentation and go to the very last slide, 15, please? Okay, yeah. The reason I'm displaying this is responding to the comments that the scheme with amendments as it is now, I think the words were used, bears no resemblance to the scheme as approved. So what you've got on the screen there is as originally approved, and on the right with the amendments that have accumulated actually on this site, and you may spot some difference if you look carefully, but I think bears no resemblance is maybe stretching a point. Anyway, so just factually, they are the plans from the respective permissions.
I think there might be one or two garages missing from what I can see.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we've heard our speakers, and do we have any questions of officers before we start the debate, members? No. No questions. Right, over to you, members. Who's going to be first?
Councillor Faulkner.
Councillor Faulkner. Thank you very much, Natasha. All the sort of faces are jumping around the screen. Councillor Faulkner.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the original approval, on section 106, is there any difference between the contributions to the authority, county council and that sort of thing? Is there any difference between the monetary values on everything from that one to the new one?
Yeah, there's a string of those as well in the 106. Just this, what we become accustomed to, but there's no proposal to change any of those.
So monetary wise, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, I can't quote you the figures, I'm afraid. I
don't need the figures. It's just any changes. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Councillor Higgins.
Yes. If new homes bonus is still going, and I never know if it's going, not going, it's about to go, all the other stuff. The only thing members, and Mr. Ward might correct me here, is when affordable homes are completed, the local authorities get an extra bonus as new homes bonus compared to market housing. But I can never work out whether it's gone or about to go, because the government keeps changing its mind on new homes bonus. So I'm lost on that, but that's one for Mr. Worley. Just on this is, I think what is important with this application, and if you and the report itself, this council is very committed to affordable housing for very good reasons too. There are a lot of young people who require affordable housing, especially those in the rural areas, the applicant and also the parish council were mentioning, and that's why communities have, I believe, embraced this through their neighbourhood plans, which Waltham has there. That all said, and it has been 28 members of this local authority who I think have been relatively strong in mixing up the nature of affordable housing. And I think really from what Platform have said, this is why Homes England, in my political view, rather than with the planning hat, why Homes England grant of seed funding, only affordable rent, only shared ownership, and it's pumping all this money into those two options. Young people don't want them. And, and so their options get narrowed because somebody else still owns part of that house. And what they want sometimes, and members have been very strong on this, is for discount market housing or rent to buy. So they pay a little bit of rent, and as the chair on this committee knows one provider, after say 5 years, that provider gives them the deposit and then they own the house like people used to do many, many years ago. So there's many routes to owning your own home through affordable housing route. I don't think this offer is that way because it's offering much of the same, I think, as the parish council was saying on other sites. And if that's pretty much filled the demand up, then really, is it going beyond to make members want to change it? And I think, from my point of view, from the work that's been put into the supplementary planning document, which is very, very strong, and I attach weight to that, and I think the officers did, I think the recommendation is smack on. And while some people maybe, think I would back affordable housing, and I do, it needs to be the right affordable housing in the right place. And from some of my own villages in the Somerby ward, some villages crying out for affordable housing and don't get any.
Mm.
And because they're not in a SS1 or SS2 village, but they still want them, and they don't really want shared ownership or affordable rent. They want to own their own house. They want to start their own families and grow into it and build on it without asking somebody else's permission. And so I think Homes England sometimes needs to look at grants to other options. Different people from different backgrounds and different levels of employment can get affordable accommodation.
Thank you. That wasn't a recommendation, was it, or a sort of a proposal?
I was happy for somebody else to propose.
I missed. Well, I'm sure others must have missed a small bit of what you were saying because of your connection.
Okay, I'm happy for somebody else to propose that, but that was just my thoughts on the recommendation, and I support the recommendation.
Councillor Steadman, I saw you next.
Yes, Chair. I think we've already established that the affordable housing need in Waltham has been met by other allocated sites here, and I echo completely what Councillor Higgins is saying. His sentiments there that we do need more affordable housing, but it needs to be spread throughout the borough. This is a rural location. They do have a neighbourhood plan, and it does have policies that state this out. And I would also have to say, particularly, I can't speak for the town areas, but particularly in rural areas where you get a site that is all affordable housing or, rent to buy, etc., it does stigmatise the development. For us in rural locations, we're trying to build communities here. We want 4-bedroom houses, 3-bedroom houses, 2-bedroom houses, affordable, the whole mix of individuals, because that's how our communities are built. So I am actually very happy to propose to go with the recommendation to refuse this on the neighbourhood plan policies H3, H2, and is it local plan policy C4? Was that the recommendation?
Let me have a look.
Was that the recommendation? And I think Jim actually mentioned the MPPF. Was he referring to paragraph 61 of the MPPF? We may as well throw it all in there if we're going to do it.
I think you're probably just as safe to stick to the recommendation, which is in line with the officer's report, basically.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
I back that up, Margaret, because really it's not really a policy test that's at work here.
It's not, is it? No.
Yeah, it is the bit that gets us nearest to a policy test, I think. It's the practicality of it and the timing.
Yes, it is. So I think if personally, and obviously Jim's just backed me up the fact that it's a recommendation, which is
that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm sorry about the alarm you can hear in the background, by the way.
I wondered what was going on there.
It's the doctor's surgery. Hopefully it'll have gone off by 3 a.m.
Okay. Councillor Chandler, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
We've had a proposal, so
Yes, I'm only too happy to second.
Okay.
I would like to raise one point though, and that is about the affordable rented. We've had a situation in Bottisford, a different provider altogether, I must say, but one became vacant, a rented property became vacant. We have a number of people on the NBC housing waiting list, and yet this house was allocated by the provider to somebody living 40 miles away. Now, this has gone down really badly in Bottisford because we have an absolute desperate need for affordable housing there. We've got a lot of employment and young people who are having to leave the village and go and live in Newark and Grantham because they can't afford our prices. And yet somebody who had been on the waiting list 3 years at Melton was overlooked, and this house was actually allocated to somebody 40 miles away. And these are things we have within our own policies we've got to stop. But no, I'm only too happy to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, very valid point there, Councillor Chandler. Anybody else want to take part in the debate? We've had a proposer and a seconder to refuse in line with the recommendations in the report. No. Well, we'll go to the vote then.
So, sorry, Chair. Could I? Yeah, sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Just quickly, my internet connection was just dropping there. So if I do switch the camera off, it will be to conserve that. The only other thing is I did notice part 2 of that recommendation was for more conversation, and I really recommend people discuss this, all together rather than throwing out some wild conspiracy theories. And and I'm sure everyone can work together on it and move everything on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we'll go to the vote now. Are you going to turn your camera off or are you going to leave it on, Councillor Higgins? Leave it on for the moment. Okay, right. If I go through the list of councillors, the first one is Councillor Bindloss.
4.
4. Councillor Brown is not here. Councillor Chandler.
4.
Councillor Faulkner.
4.
Councillor Glancy. 4. Councillor Hewson.
4.
Councillor Higgins.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Posnett.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Steadman.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Wood.
4.
Thank you. That is unanimous for those present on this particular item. So thank you very much, everybody. Now I'm going to find my agenda buried somewhere. Item 6, I don't have anything for urgent business. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming along this evening. We have another one in 4 weeks' time. And then after that, we may well be back to face-to-face meetings. Who knows? So thank you very much, everybody, for coming along this evening. And I'd like to close the meeting at 8:02. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again in 4 weeks' time.